Good morning. I want to address something that I'm not even entirely sure how I'm going to address it. I had to bring you a little closer. I this is it's kind of a strange thing, and to preface this, I just want to give you a little tiny quick backstory. My mom's people were from Cornwall. She brought to my life an incredibly rich and full life of fairies. And so she believed in the fairies and she taught me to believe in the fairies. And so I do. Um, and there's little bits of evidence around my house that would suggest that, such as sometimes you'll see a glass of wine with just a tiny bit left in it. And she always taught me to leave the last sip for the fairies. So I always do that. I've done that pretty much as long as I can remember. So sometimes I set food out for them. I have little tiny dishes that I find in thrift stores and around just specifically for their little treats that I give them. So I just want to say I have never, ever that I can remember in memory have ever dreamt of fairies, nor have I ever have seen a fairy. I've seen shadows of what could be fairies out of my peripheral vision, but I've never seen or talked to or met a fairy straight on, nor have I ever dreamt of them. Well, I had a dream last night of a fairy, and she wasn't a tiny fairy, like a little fairy, like a little fairy. She was probably about this tall, and how I met her in my dream was I was in my bedroom, but it wasn't the bedroom here in the cottage. It was a different bedroom, and it was an attic room, and the attic bedroom had like a little crawl space door that like latched and came open. And I was sitting on my bed and I saw this little fairy person walk out and go over to a pile. Sometimes I leave my dirty clothes in a pile on the floor the night that I take them off, because I'm just like, oh, got all these clothes off, yay. And so I just throw them on a pile on the floor until whatever. I do have a little basket that I can put them in, but typically I just don't. I don't know. But anyway, so she came over to the little pile of dirty clothes that were sitting on the floor, and she kind of was going through them, and I'm like sitting on my bed watching this. And so I'm watching it, and I ask her, like, what are you doing? And she said, well, I gather up your clothes at night. And I said, well, what do you do with them? And she walks over to her little to that little crawl space that was in the attic bedroom, and she opens the door, and in this little crawl space was her whole home and her whole like living space. And so I got down on my knees and I was looking in there, and there in like within view was a pile about this high of nicely folded and stacked articles of my clothing were sitting there. And I said, well, why do you want my clothing? And she said, because I'm hungry. And I said, well, I have these muffins, and I happen to have like some blueberry muffins there. Dreams are funny that way. And so I said, there was probably about maybe 4 muffins, blueberry muffins, sitting in my room on this table thing. So I said, well, here, you can have a muffin. So I take a muffin, and it was really big for her because she was only tiny. So I broke off a little part, and I said to her, you can have as much of this muffin as you want to eat, but it's rather large. So here, and I gave her a little part of the blueberry muffin. And the dream ended with her there, and just having, okay, to me it was a little chunk of muffin like this big, but for her it was really big in her hands, and she just had this muffin in her hands, and she was just eating the muffin. And that was my full dream, and or as much as of it as I can remember. And I'm just wondering if any of my viewers know a fairy lore, or what that, or dream interpretation, or what that might mean. And I have to be honest, my mom did talk about the fairies a lot, and I do know a lot of her beliefs about the fairies, but I've never really read fairy lore like that. So yeah, if anybody has any ideas or suggestions of what that dream might mean. I mean, obviously I'm gonna feed the fairies tonight, and which I do, so I don't know why they're hungry or why they're stealing my clothes. Maybe not stealing them. I don't know. She was stealing them. She was taking them and putting them in her little house in a little folded pile. So anyway, that's all I got. I hope you guys have a great day. It's Wednesday. This weekend, I'm going to be working on attempting to wallpaper my hallways, so I hope you tune in for that. Love and kisses from the Willow Cottage.